All right. We are live. Elite Performance with Dr. Brad, the place where high achieving professional men come to learn how to get the consistency to win in your fitness, family, and faith without sacrificing your career or business success. Today, we are talking about lessons learned. This is really part two of lessons learned from the Kanye Genius documentary. Again, if you have not seen this documentary, I highly suggest that you watch it. You don't have to be a Kanye fan. Truth be told, I'm a college dropout, late registration, graduation album Kanye fan. Post that, I don't know, things got a little. Well, if you watch the documentary, you'll see things kind of changed over time with Kanye. So whether you're a fan or not, listen, I think there are some lessons to be learned from the documentary, really in terms of last week we talked about faith. This week we're talking about identity, how identity plays such a massive role when it comes to our results in life. As a matter of fact, our identity is how can I describe? Our identity is it's really what defines our results. So I'm gonna talk about how identity plays such a huge role in what you see with Kanye, because he was massively successful. Things got out of control over time. But in this two-part kind of lessons from the Genius documentary, last week I focused on faith. This time we're going to be talking about identity. So let's kind of dive into this thing real quick. Again, just to review, I didn't even know this documentary existed. My wife and I typically on Wednesday nights, as part of date night, we just watch something on Netflix. And a couple of shows that we enjoy, one on HBO called Succession, which we're all caught up on, so we haven't watched that. We couldn't watch that. Another show called Ted Lasso, which we're big fans of. No new shows have come up for those two shows. So we were like, what are we gonna watch? We were all caught up on the stuff that we watch, and it just so happened that this Kanye documentary popped up, and we said, let's watch that. And then we kind of got hooked. I'll say I got hooked. She watched it because I was interested, but we actually both enjoyed it because there was some really cool things to learn from there. Today, like I said, I'm going to be talking about identity, and the way I define identity is your identity is your internal perception. It's your internal beliefs about yourself. It's really how you perceive or how you see yourself. Your deep internal beliefs about yourself, those subconscious beliefs. Sometimes these are beliefs that we're completely unaware of, but those deep-seated beliefs, what's in your heart, what oftentimes the Bible describes as what's in your heart, what you really feel about yourself, the emotions that you really have about yourself, your self-perception. This is your identity. And so the challenge that we have as high achieving men, even though we may achieve and perform at a high level in certain areas, right? There are other areas where we may be falling short, and it's primarily a consistency issue. You'll hear me say this time and time again. If you're consistent in your business, you'll probably be successful. If you're consistent in your fitness, you'll be in shape. If you're consistent in those things needed to have a healthy relationship, then you'll have a healthy relationship. But these areas where we're falling short, typically it's because of inconsistency. And so if it's in your business, then it may be showing up in terms of you're not being consistent in tasks that you know you have to do in order to grow your business or grow in your career, and it's just not happening. And I know you know what I'm talking about. Sometimes you're like, why am I doing the things that I know I'm not supposed to be doing? Or why do I not do the things that I know I'm supposed to be doing, right? It's a consistency issue. Sometimes it's inconsistency in our body. We're not consistent eating and working out to the level of what we want to do to get the results that we have. When it comes to building healthy relationships, we're not doing the date nights. We're not We're not doing the things that would that would allow us to have a healthy and thriving relationship with our spouse, with our children. And so our main challenge is consistency. And identity has a big part to play in this. Now, check this out. If you haven't heard me say this, again, I'm going to say this over and over. Your behavior, the behaviors that you do or don't do, are driven by an underlying belief. Behaviors, every behavior, even if it's a lack of a behavior, stems from some sort of belief. No different than an apple tree comes from an apple seed. Okay, your behaviors come from some sort of underlying belief. Your actions in life are rooted to some underlying attitude. You know, I got to be a literal with this thing, right? So behaviors, belief, actions, attitudes, right? But real talk, think about this. I mean, so if that's the case, then that means we talked about what the definition of identity is. The definition of identity is your internal perception of yourself, your internal beliefs about you. So if there is an inconsistent behavior, that means there is some underlying identity, perception of yourself that you have that is showing up in a way of your behavior. So if you ever, oh my goodness, if you ever really want to know what you think about yourself, your self-perception, just look at your consistent behavior, the behaviors that you're consistent at. Even if you're consistently inconsistent at something, right? If you are consistently inconsistent at something, how you're showing up in that area is how you really perceive yourself. Sometimes it's a slap in the face. I get it. And I'm going to bring this back to the documentary of Kanye here in just a second. But see, the problem that we struggle with, fellas, is that we're trying to work harder and not smarter. We're just working on trying to just work on our behaviors, trying to work on the behaviors. But again, those behaviors won't change if there's not an underlying belief. The identity has got to change, or the identity has got to get more clear on who it is that we really are. So I was having a conversation with a good friend of mine. What's up, Roy? Just so happened to be the friend I was having a conversation with, because we both enjoyed this documentary, right? And it was fascinating. It was fascinating to see Kanye, somebody who everyone else perceived as someone who was simply a producer in music. Like so many people saw him as, oh man, you just make beats. You just make beats. He would rap, and it was crazy because even though sometimes you're watching him rapping, he would just destroy the mic. People still saw him as this dude who made beats who happened to rap. Well, here's what's amazing. Again, your behavior reflects your identity. He kept rapping, and he saw himself as this dude who was just a phenomenal rapper. He knew who he was despite the fact of what other people thought he was or what other people thought of him. And it showed up in his behavior because he kept rapping and had every reason not to continue being consistent at rapping. Yet and still he kept doing it because that is how he perceived himself. He said, listen, yes, I got to do this thing. I got to make these beats right now to make money. But don't kid yourself. I am a beast of a rapper, even if you don't think that. And see, a lot of us, sometimes we navigating through life, and what's happening is that other people's perception of us is taking us out of who we really are. And it's affecting our identity. When if you know who you really are, rooted in who you really are, Kanye didn't waver. And because of that, eventually the world saw what he saw of himself. How many of us want the world to see of us how we truly see ourselves? But see, a lot of us, we don't really know. Here's the problem. A lot of us don't really know who we are. We don't really understand the power of who we are. So there's really three things we struggle with when it comes to this identity thing. And when I'm talking about this, it becomes so clear why Kanye became so successful as a rapper, because again, he just knew who he was. Okay. Now later things got a little crazy because I don't think he had enough accountability in his life. Right. So his identity got a little haywire. But there's a few things that we got to do to really work on this identity. First, our identity doesn't match up with our results. I kind of touched on that a little bit. Like, our identity doesn't match up with our results. Like, if it comes to our business, if we're not getting the results we want in our business, our identity is not really really matching up with who we really are. Now, the second thing is we don't know what our identity really is, because the way we're defining our identity is not really in who we truly are. So we define our identity based on our pain or the positions that we hold in life. So I might say, you know what, man, I might be struggling in my fitness, and I can't lose the weight. So I identify myself as somebody who can't lose weight, or I identify myself as somebody who's just a big dude. So let me ask you a question. If you identify yourself like that, how do you think you're going to show up in the world? That's going to show up in your behaviors that are going to be consistent with your identity. So when I talk about our identity that doesn't match up with our results, really and truly it does. We just don't know what our real underlying beliefs are. So we unfortunately identify ourselves based on our pain or the mistakes that we made in life, right? Show up in our marriage, say, man, oh my gosh, I'm not faithful, or I'm not the husband I want to be, or based on mistakes that we may have made in the past. When it comes to our relationship, we define ourselves that way. Well, if we define ourselves that way, how do you think we're going to show up? Right? So we define our identity either based on our pain or certain positions. So something that I've done for so long, be like, oh, I'm a physician. I'm a doctor. I can't do anything else. That's my position. I'll talk myself out of opportunities in the past, right? Because I'm a doctor. My friend and I, we were talking about, if you look at the example of David, you look at the example of David in the Bible. He wasn't even in the army, but he knew who he was, that he could beat Goliath. Nobody else believed, but in his heart of heart, he didn't have to have the position of being in the army to go do what he had to do. He knew who he was, which, by the way, was defined by knowing the power that he had, because he knew God was with him. We're going to get to that here in a second, in terms of how we should really, truly identify ourselves. Because once you figure out that identity is so big to your results, well, you're going to start really doing some identity work. So we'll define ourselves by our positions, man. What kind of work you do, And we are so much more than just the positions we hold. If Kanye just defined himself by being somebody who made beats, we wouldn't even have a documentary to watch. So you are not your past pain. You are not your past. You are not your position. You should be defined by your power, by your true power. Here's the third problem. We really don't pay enough attention to what our true identity is, because our true identity is based on the power with which God said, this is who you are. This is who you really are. So we really don't pay enough attention toward what our true identity is. And by the way, what you focus on expands. So if you focus and give attention to what your real identity is, you will express that. We just don't give enough attention to that with which we really are. Kanye knew he was a rapper. That's why he kept on rapping. Do you understand what I'm saying? His behavior represented his underlying identity and self-perception of who he was, despite what everything around him was saying. See, we're inconsistent because we don't truly see ourselves the way we want to be. We don't connect our true identity with our desired self. We don't connect our identity with our desired self. We connect our identity with our current self. And if we continue to do that, we'll continue to get our current results. Man, I hope y'all feeling what I'm saying right now. Like, I hope y'all hearing what I'm saying. Because if you hear what I'm saying, you'll see that the work is not about hard work. It's about heart work. You see, it's not even necessarily about what you say, but it's about what you really believe in here, what really settles in your heart. That is what you will express. But see, there's a way to do that heart work so that you can change the way that your behaviors express themselves. Right? So here's what I want you to do. Number one, if you haven't watched the documentary, you don't have to be a Kanye fan. Just watch it for the simple lessons of what I'm talking about. Okay. The next thing I want you to do when it comes to working on this identity is I want you to find, and I'm going to say this, you probably heard me say this on just about every podcast episode. Listen, I reference the Bible and tell you to go read it because it is a book of results, not religion. It's not a book of religion. It's a book of results. Okay. So I want you to go find 5 scriptures that speak to your true identity. Okay. I'm telling you, I need you to do this in whatever area of life, whether it's your business, whether it's your body and fitness, or whether it's building healthy relationships. I need you to go find 5 scriptures that speak to your identity. Literally, you can go to Google right now and type in what does the Bible say about my identity? Or what does the Bible say about who I am? What does God say about who I am? You could Google that and it will literally spit you out scripture after scripture. And I want you to find 5 that resonate with you. And here's what I want you to do. I want you to read them until they sink into your heart. I want you to read them until like your heart believes it, not your head. This is heart work. It requires heart work, not hard work. We're making it way too hard by just trying to work. We're trying to work on the surface and not the soil. We're trying to work on just the conscious and not the subconscious. We're trying to work on the surface and not the spirit, man. See, the results we get in life is not because of, what you see, this tangible world, what's being expressed, is simply a reflection of our spirit, what we truly believe about ourselves. We need to focus on the truth, the power that has been entrusted to us, given to us, as opposed to identifying ourselves by the pain and the positions that we have. That ain't got nothing to do with nothing. If anything, that's going to limit you. I don't care how successful you are right now. If you're defining yourself, your identity by your position or even your past, you are limiting yourself. There is more. Right? Because the truth is this. The truth is God is in you. See, we have an unfair advantage. We have an unfair advantage because we have God in us. The unfair advantage really is for those who not only recognize that, oh my goodness, man, I wouldn't even want to talk about this. Those who have an unfair advantage are the ones who not just recognize that God is in us, because see, a lot of us recognize that. Okay, I got God in us. We know some scripture. We know what Paul says, this, that, and the other. But who actually receive it. See, it's a recognition thing and a reception thing. You got to receive it. See, I can recognize that the ball is coming in the air, but it ain't until I receive it that it's mine. I can recognize that, oh, a pass has been thrown, but it's not until I receive it that it's mine. See, a lot of people recognize the fact, recognize the idea that God is in them, that God is within them and with them. But when you receive it, oh man, things change. So listen, I need you to read those scriptures until it sinks in. I need you to read those scriptures until it sinks in. And it's no way that you can tell me that once it sinks in that things ain't gonna change. Period. Because if you listen to a podcast I did a couple episodes ago, see, transformation happens in the soil. Transformation happens in the subconscious. Transformation happens in the spirit. It don't happen on all this hard work we're trying to do out here. You work in the soil and watch the behaviors that you're looking to do just happen more consistently. It just happen easier. It's just going to be easier to be consistent. Man. So listen, I want you to focus on identity and the importance of identity. And then you'll watch some things change. Go from that hard work to hard work, fellas, and watch what happens.